Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us here at Function Point today to talk about some more advanced estimating practices that we have in FP. We still have a few people just trickling in, so I'm going to just give a 1-minute warning while we get set up, and we look forward to talking to y'all soon. All right, everyone. Looks like we have got a full room, so why don't we get started? Just want to quickly check in. Jimmy, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Awesome. And just checking, are you able to see my screen? Because I did also have a GoToWebinar force me an update right for this. So I just want to make sure everything's working hunky-dory.
Yes, I can see advanced estimating November 18th, 2020.
And look at, I got the
Occurring.
date right today, Jimmy. Aren't you
Well,
proud?
I am very proud.
Good. I'm glad to hear it.
Gonna send
Awesome.
you a gold medal after this.
Yes, gold star, my favorite. Awesome. Well, I'm sure everyone would love to hear us banter, but they're all here to talk about estimating today. So, guys, what we really wanted to do today was bring everyone together to talk a little bit more about estimating. Everyone has definitely gone through, created estimates in the past, but we want to talk about a few more workflows and some other items available to us today, just to sort of up your game. So, your host today, I am Sophia Wilson. I'm here on the customer experience side of things here at Function Point. Probably most of you have spoken with me or listened to my voice at some point while interacting with Function Point. And then, of course, I've got my lovely co-host, Jimmy Wu, who is our Director of Sales and Marketing here at Function Point. And he always is just so kind to join me on hosting these things. And you've probably also heard his voice at some point throughout your experience with us too. So some agenda items we have today. We're going to talk about some different workflow options. So most of you have probably, again, been working with Function Point for a long time. You know some of our most straightforward and best practice ways. I'm going to show you a few other different workflow choices in case you're just feeling like things aren't fully working and we maybe want to talk about some alternatives for you and your team. So looking forward to going through those. We're also going to talk about costing today. So again, if anyone has talked to me in the past, you know I'm a huge advocate for making sure your costs are in Function Point. Now, of course, the most important one is your actual cost so that you can track and compare your profitability later on. But in FP, you do also have the ability of putting in a blended cost rate as well so that you can start to predict what you think those costs may look like. And we're going to get into a little bit of some of what our best practices of formulas are. But of course, whatever is working for you and your team, I don't necessarily want to mess with that either. Also, we're going to look at how you can build your estimates based off of your staff, service, and roles. So again, if any of you have been using Function Point at a basic level, you know that it's definitely down to the service level. That is our most straightforward and basic way. You actually have to have those services to be able to create an estimate. But if, say, in cases where you are needing to develop your estimate a little bit more for maybe some of your client-facing printouts, we do have those abilities to actually estimate down to that level of a specific staff member or a specific role. And then I'm going to just talk about some basic tips and tricks as well for you that are, again, when I'm chatting with customers, maybe there's a little bit more questioning around it, or they don't actually know that it's there. So I'm going to just show you a couple of those items as well. So workflow options. Again, for those of you that have been working with Function Point for a while, you know that our most straightforward option is the estimate to schedule. So you'd actually go ahead, you would create your estimate, and then you would go and actually build your schedule from that. However, where we get a little bit more advanced is in those cases where you're actually working from a schedule to an estimate. And this is a pretty regularly talked about thing, I have to say, recently, where our customers are actually starting by wanting to build out their timelines and their schedules and actually understanding what the entire project could actually look like before they would want to create an estimate that they would then share with their client. So we do have that capability here in FP. So we're going to just quickly walk through that one today as well. And then here's another fun one, which is the estimate to the schedule to then you have the ability to update an estimate later on. So again, this could be a case where you actually know what services you're going to provide. You just don't necessarily know what hours need to go against everything at that point. So we do have a workflow where you have the ability to create a $0 estimate with the appropriate services that you know that you're going to need, create that schedule to then be able to build it out further. And then we do have a fun way of being able to update that original estimate to pull through those estimated hours for you on the estimate. So it just kind of takes out some of that guesswork when it comes to the bulk hours that you need to put at, say, a service level, although you may have more tasks associated to that service on the schedule. So again, we're going to walk through that as well.
Sorry, Sophia, I'm just going to jump in real quick here. I
Yeah.
wanted to just do a quick housekeeping to let everyone know that in your GoToWebinar control panel, there is a questions tab. So throughout the webinar, feel free to ask any questions throughout, and I'll be there in the background trying to answer them as quickly as possible.
Awesome. Thank you, Jimmy. Yes, I guess I missed that part. The reason Jimmy is co-hosting with me is so he can answer questions at the same time as we're going through this. So looking forward to hearing some of those questions. And if there's anything he feels would be really valuable to talk about on screen, he will interrupt me so that we can make sure that we touch on it as well. So yeah, send through those questions. Great. So then going into the estimate cost. So again, anyone that has chatted with me before, huge advocate for putting in cost rates for your actuals. This allows you, again, to see that profitability. But again, by creating a blended cost rate within Function Point and actually entering in a cost rate card is going to help you predict what your cost may be at an estimate level. So that also this will allow you to adjust accordingly later on if that needs to happen. Again, a lot of larger agencies that I work with that maybe have junior or senior designers or just junior or senior level individuals that would obviously come with different rates. It is good to be able to sort of break out what their billable rates are as well as some of those cost rates so that you can actually see and adjust accordingly. So huge advocate for that. And then we do have a cost rate calculation that we have recommended here at Function Point. We do have a document that we share. And this cost rate calculation is we do recommend your total overhead divided by working hours in a year added to your staff salary divided by working hours in a year. So this is what we have just found is a really effective way of calculating it. However, of course, everyone does have their different ways, whether that is just straight overhead and salary, and not including those hours. But again, these slides are usually shared after, so you will have access to this. And if anyone ever wants to take a look at our training document, it is available through our help site, or even just reach out to your success manager who will be able to share it as well. Awesome. And then going into a few tips and tricks. So these have just been recent ones that I have found a lot of agencies aren't aware of that you're able to do within Function Point. So being able to create and track revisions. And then we also have the ability to create estimates based off of previous actuals from previous pieces of work. So if in the past you had created an estimate, gone forward, moved forward with the work, and you've realized that all of your hours were completely off base, you have the ability to actually go back to that original job or estimate and copy it based off of those actuals rather than the estimated amount, so that again it allows you to see or be more accurate in your estimating. So I will also show you how to do that. And then also surprisingly, something that a lot of people have been talking about recently is just like printout and printout options. So I have created just a few different levels of printouts that I tend to see while working with agencies. So I'll quickly show you those if we have enough time, but there is the printing preferences through the back end of function point, which will definitely walk you through all the different options as well. So yeah. And then of course, Q&A, as Jimmy was saying, he is answering all the questions in the back end as quickly as he can. If for some reason, outside of this webinar, you start thinking of some questions and you're like, shoot, wish I had asked that, don't ever hesitate to reach out to success@functionpoint.com. You'll have access to the entire success team to be able to help you out and find your team's best solutions for yourselves. Okay. Great, awesome. So let's dive into the system now, because that's where everyone is excited to go. So what I want to do is just walk through some of these different workflows. Now, before I quickly jump in, Jimmy, I just want to check, is there any good questions that have already come through that you want to make sure that I touch on screen?
No, not yet. I
Okay.
think we're just ready.
All right, great, awesome. So we're going to go through the first workflow. Obviously, for all of you that have worked within Function Point for a while, I'm not going to go through all the nitty gritty of this page. Obviously, all of you should know how to add an estimate. Blue lines are required, where our best practices are here. You have to have services within there to be able to go ahead. So what I have done is I've already created our webinar design here for us today. And within our estimate, this is where you're going to be able to see all of the different services that we have built out. So I've already gone ahead and built out this webinar design estimate for us. We've got our individual services. We've gone ahead and calculated the different quantities for us. I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to edit these services. Again, as you can see, we've already built out those hours. We have the rates associated with them. This is that service line level of estimating that I was speaking of. However, I'm gonna just dive a little bit into how we can start breaking it out actually at an individual and role level at this point. So if in these cases, you know that all of these services are correct, but you're just wanting to get a more accurate view on who will be working on it, and even having individuals that have different rates. And so it would change the estimate as well. So for something like research, I'm going to come in here and you just have this plus button over here on the right hand side, and it's going to produce another line underneath here for us. So with this, I would actually be able to come in and we can estimate at the designer level, which will then pull in that designer, the rate at 100, sorry, we've got our hours of 35, and you're going to notice that the rate has changed from 100 to 140 an hour because of the fact that we have a designer working on this. Which then has now overridden that total line item for us to the $4,900 for this. So it's recalculated it based off of the rate that we have set against a designer in the back end of the system. You're also going to notice that I'm going to change it to Jimmy Woo, and it also has now changed to $125 an hour, adjusting it now to $4,375 for this line item. So again, we can continue to break that out here, and you can have as many individuals as you need. I've also got myself in here. I actually gave myself a lower rate for that 15 hours to recalculate it for us. You also need, again, we can put multiple individuals against this. So for myself, I can add myself in. And again, you're going to see how it is going to just change those calculations based off of the individual billing rates here. So since the system had 35 hours preset for this service line, it has kept that against Jimmy's line. But if I know that Jimmy will actually be working on 10 hours of this, and because I have the lower rate, we're going to put in that 25 to create that total of 35, and then it has now broken it out as necessary as well. So this is really handy, again, in those cases where you maybe have senior or junior level roles within your agency, and you want to break it out because you need to be this detailed with your client to ensure that they have the most accuracy as possible while they're also planning out their own budget to work with you. So these are really great ways of going about doing that. I'm going to save that, and we're just going to view services because again, it's going to now do that breakout. So something that I do already have preset in my demo system is the fact that there is this cost column here. Don't worry, I'm going to walk you through that shortly, but it is just pre-calculating it for us based off of the cost rate that we have in the back end, based off of the number of hours. But if we're looking at the estimate total, it's that quantity with the rate, which is the service rate, and then that total to then come to that total for the estimate itself. Now in the workflow, this is where we have actually built out the estimate first, and we now know that we want to build out a schedule. So from here, it would honestly be as easy as coming up here to add schedule from the top right-hand corner. All of you should have experience with adding schedules in, so you know there's options of creating templates in here. Just for the sake of this one, I'm going to continue using the estimate as the template rather than using a unique one. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. And now you have the schedule already starting to pre-build out for you, so that all you need to do is actually start inputting those dates. But something else that you're going to notice is because we had gone ahead and broken out those different individuals at those service levels, it has already assigned 2 different tasks here for research to Jimmy and myself with those hour breakout as well, between the 10 hours and the 25. So again, if you have that knowledge to be able to break it out at the estimate, it does make it a little bit smoother moving into the schedule for yourself as well, because it's already starting to build it for you. All right, great. Jimmy, any questions before I dive into scenario 2?
Yeah, actually, I have a question from Jackie, who was asking about the cost rate. Do you need to actually have the staff or role be added into the service line item for the cost rate calculation to work, or is that the view cost, billable, and margins button to work?
No, so the cost will still pull whether you have, so if we navigate back to that estimate, and if I were to come in here and I'm just going to delete out these, save that. I'm going to put back in that 100. Save that, and we will view services, and that cost column will continue to, oh, of course, because I forgot to put the hours back in, my bad. Save that now. And the view services. So that cost rate column still remains. The cost is originally held at that service level. It's really where there's the benefit for the individual is to break out different billing rates rather than cost rates. Anything you'd like to add there, Jimmy?
No, I think could you just show the view cost, billable, and margin, since we have a few questions on that part as well?
Yeah, definitely. So this cost, billable, and margins, again, is taking those different individuals and actually breaking it out at that internal service, internal expense, and external expense level as well, so that you can see where those different cost and billable amounts are broken out. Due to the fact that I kept this estimate very basic and we only had time trackable services against it, that is why it is only really at that one level. Okay.
Hey, awesome. A workflow question actually is, because since you were adding the schedule earlier, so I'm curious, as you go through the schedule to estimate workflow, perhaps maybe if you can touch on whether it is best practice to do that on the creating a schedule in an estimating phase, or what scenarios you might recommend. We had a couple of questions on that.
Yeah, definitely. You know, when it comes to best practices, it really depends a lot on how you prefer to work internally. And then from there, we can help you build the best workflow for yourself. But let's definitely walk through the other one, because really where there is a huge benefit in starting from creating a schedule and then turning that into an estimate is more for those cases where, you know, maybe your PMs and your account executive teams maybe butt heads a little bit. I'm sure we've all had that conversation where someone has overpromised something and then the PM is stressing trying to figure out how to deliver for it. So it allows the PM to have a little bit more control, I guess you could say, where they're able to build out how a piece of work should actually look or pan out, I guess you could say, so that an account executive is really provided as much information as they need to be able to estimate appropriately. So it is a really great way. So again, I'm assuming everyone in here knows how to go ahead and click add schedule and either choose to use a template or not, or build it from scratch. I have already pre-built out a schedule here that is not attached to an estimate yet, but what I haven't done is I built it from a template, so it already pulled through all the hours and everything for us. So this is quite an elaborate schedule with just the number of internal tasks that we have. They are attached to different services. So as all of you know, you can have different names for tasks, and it's just about connecting it back to the service for the task itself, and you can have as many tasks as you need. And again, the beauty of creating a schedule from scratch rather than from an estimate is that you're not going to be limited to just the services that are on the estimate until you turn it into an estimate. So as of right now, while I'm building this out, I have actually access to all of the different services and service groups that live within Function Point, so that it just takes out kind of that piece of guesswork, so that when I then create the estimate, it's going to only pull through the different services that I actually used against each of these tasks. So again, working here, I am under the assumption that everyone on this webinar has gone and built a schedule before. If you haven't, we do have other really great webinars on how to actually build schedules themselves and best practices around that. So again, what we have here is a really well built out schedule. And I now know, okay, this as a PM, this is how I know that we can hit the deadlines that we are talking about. And what does this estimate now actually look like, so we can start to build out what the costs for the client are going to look like. So we then have the ability to just come up here to add estimate and job. And we're going to go ahead and click that. It's going to give us, again, that basic add estimate page. So you just need to add in a few little things here. I'll just do classic website. Jimmy, you will be our AE here. And again, based off of the schedule, I should know what that final date should be for that. So I'm just going to enter that in as well. You're then going to see the different services, because it has already picked out for you which services have been used on this schedule, so that you can do a quick review, take a look at it, and then go ahead and click submit whenever you're ready. And it has now gone ahead and actually built this estimate for us. So again, we had a dozen or so tasks on that previous schedule, but it has now been able to break it down into 4 simple services for us, with the quantity of hours, where that cost is, and again, what that billing rate is for us throughout this. So this is a really good way of, again, you see how easy we were able to simplify an estimate based off of a schedule that, again, it's allowing that PM and that AE to actually work together to be as accurate as possible. Jimmy, any questions from that, or anything that you would actually like to add? I know you have experience as a PM, so it's always really great to hear your insight too.
Ooh, that kind of took me on the spot. Sorry, I was just answering a couple questions.
Sorry, I know you get into those questions too, so.
Yeah, so I think I find a lot of, for food for thought for everyone, is that a lot of the larger agencies that I've worked with in the past, where when you're doing large projects that you might not, that are like 100 grand, 50 grand, 200 grand type of budget, where, missing an estimate or not estimating correctly is going to lose quite a bit of revenue for the agency and margin. That's when the schedule, with attaching a schedule to the estimate in the early phases, will really help eliminate that. I would say, obviously small jobs like logo, banner ads, social media, those are pretty standard and cookie cutter, and adding a schedule might just add more to your existing efficiency workflow. But when it comes to like a complete website rebrand, those type of projects, we highly recommend that you definitely use the schedule when you're creating the estimate, so that your estimate is much more accurate. So that helps.
Awesome, great. Before I dive into the third scenario, Jimmy, any questions that, again, you think we should tackle on screen?
No, I don't think so. I think we're ready for the next workflow.
Okay, great, awesome. We're making some good progress today. I was worried this was gonna take up a lot of time. Okay, great. So the third scenario that I want to talk about is, again, a regularly asked question is, I need to get an estimate built. I know it's going to take these services, but I don't know how many hours everything is going to actually take. So how do I kind of figure that out? So something that we have come up with is a bit more of like a work back schedule. So what we're able to do is, and I've created again, just a basic estimate here. But what you're going to notice is that unlike the last one, I haven't put in any hours here into the estimate itself, because I don't actually know how many hours it's going to take. I just know that these items are required to complete this. So again, this would be a case where maybe an AE would be able to come in, create the basics of an estimate, let a PM know like, hey, can you build out the schedule now based off of this to let me know again, like how I should be setting expectations correctly with our client. So from here, you would be able to, again, go ahead and add a schedule, basic steps. We're gonna pull the estimate as the details here, but now what we would be able to do is go ahead, break out the different tasks as needed, add in our different hours. So I'm gonna go ahead and put some hours into some of these here so that we can start seeing what this schedule is maybe going to look like. And please forgive me, folks, I'm just entering in some hours. I'm sure yours definitely look different on each of your schedules as well. Put 15 hours in for that. And maintenance, maybe we'll just put in like 30 hours for over the time. Again, going ahead and building out the different dates and building out your schedule here, who it would go to. You can go ahead and create multiple tasks that would then be able to connect to it underneath. We'll break out those hours. Maybe this one will be 15 and this one will be 15 as well. So again, you should be familiar with creating the schedules, but we've now gone in, we've added in the number of hours we would expect all of these to take, actually broken out the schedule if that's what you need to do into each individual task to then be able to build up into it. But this is where there is this fun trick to be able to perform on the estimate itself. So now the PM would be able to notify your AE. It's like, okay, I've gone and I've built out what this entire schedule should look like. So you'd be able to navigate back to the estimate details. And this is actually super fun that we're able to do. We're going to edit these services. And there's now this button of sync estimated hours. So you're going to see that this is still at $0 hours for all of this currently, because the schedule to estimate, they don't speak to each other automatically. But if you know that those hours you've now put against the schedule or built out of that schedule, you want to pull them back through, you can click this sync estimated hours button. It's actually going to give you the outline of everything that they're going to update for you and all the different tasks. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click sync. And you're now going to see that all of these hours have updated here for us and then calculated now what this estimate could look like. So again, this is just another one of those cases where it's allowing the team to work a little bit together and utilize both the schedule and the estimate to be able to build out and estimate the most appropriately for your client. So this is definitely a really great workflow, and it is something that we have found as a really great solution for a lot of our clients that are trying to sort of figure out the best way of collaboration between the two teams to be the most accurate. So this sync estimate button. Something I do always want to throw in here is that this is really only a way for the schedule to communicate back to the estimate because of the fact that you can have multiple tasks that feed into a single service on an estimate. That is how we are able to do that communication. I have had a few people come to me in the past and be like, okay, well, but I just updated the estimate hours, why isn't that pulling through to the schedule? Like, why can't I update it there? And that's due to the fact, again, the system doesn't necessarily know where to drop each of those hours. So in a case where you maybe have 5 tasks that feed into wireframing and you're trying to add an additional 5 hours, and you're assuming that the system should know that an hour should go against each of the tasks, it doesn't. So again, it would probably be more in those cases where you would want to go to the schedule and update the number of hours you would expect those tasks to look like, and then sync it back to the estimate for yourselves later on. Okay, great. Jimmy, just checking in again. Questions, concerns, anything else that I should be touching on for this workflow?
No, I think it's actually really cool. I've always find this to be a really cool workflow to get really
Yeah, I know.
accurate estimates. So
It's one of your favorites, isn't
it is one of my favorites, I have to admit,
it?
because
And
I've always had account reps who undercharge for the services, and then I create the schedule to them, and they're like, I didn't know that. I'm not adding these hours for you. So this really helps streamline that process. Anyways,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, definitely. No, and it's one of my favorites as well. And honestly, it's one of those that sometimes I forget about, and then I'm chatting with someone, and I'm like, oh wait, no, this is actually perfect for you. So it's definitely a really great option. Awesome. So, and now the sort of final workflow, and that was also a bit of a tips and tricks that I had put in earlier, is utilizing previous work to understand where the actuals may have ended up, and utilizing that to create a new estimate in the future so that you are, again, able to continue to estimate as accurately as possible for your clients. So I have gone ahead and just picked out a previous job that is living within Function Point right now. I know that this travel brochure is a really great option for a future travel brochure. So I would actually be able to come in. I'm going to just do a quick review of the financials. You'll see that not all of the hours actually added up. You know, we've got design at 29 and the actuals came in at 23. So that one wasn't too bad. We weren't too far off with that. However, when it comes into some of these like research items, we barely even hit half of the number of hours that we had estimated for this. So we know that this is an area that we could adjust for the future to be able to estimate more accurately. So again, our estimate total came to 95 hours originally, but the actuals came in at 60. So I'd actually really like for us to utilize these hours here for a future estimate. So what we would do is we can actually navigate back to the original estimate. And what you have is this option up here to copy estimate. Because I know that this has all of the services, everything that I want to provide to our client already living in here, I really just want to copy this and associate it to a new individual. So I'm going to go ahead and add this, or sorry, copy it. Now, what this notice is giving me right now, and at first I almost didn't want to show it when we were on the webinar, but I think it's actually something really good for us to talk about, is if you are making changes to your services and service groups in the back end of your system, we will notify you. Because of the fact that this is an older estimate, we have made some of these service groups inactive or disabled them in the back end because we don't expect to use them. So if you do see this pop up, this may be one of those cases then where you should actually just make sure that your team that would be utilizing some of these aren't using disabled items, because then that could affect your reporting later on, because there's probably a reason you've made that inactive and you probably have a new service that you'd want them using. So we do give you the option of if you'd like to include the disabled services and service groups. For this example, because I don't want anything to disappear, I'm going to click yes. However, by default, I would suggest that no, so that the right ones can be put in and estimated for. So just something to kind of take note of. The system does try to give you as many notices when items like this are happening. So I'm going to click continue. Again, it's going to pull up as much information as possible right off the bat. I know that this brochure is actually going to be for somebody different. This time we're actually going to do something for Coca-Cola, because they're, you know, their polar bear is off to figure some stuff out. But really the biggest thing that we want to point out here is this quantities from section. So we have pulled based off of estimated. So that was, we're going to completely copy what that previous estimate was, or based off of actuals, which is what I want to choose. I want that more accurate hours from the experience of walking through this. So again, this kind of comes back to conversations that if anyone has had me for your initial training, put estimated hours in just so you have something as a starting point. And then again, as you continue to maybe repeat some of this work for different people and seeing how many hours things actually do take, you can adjust accordingly and calculate based off of that actuals. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click save. And again, this has broken everything out. It is quite detailed for you. I'm going to just click save and put it into view services for us so that we can also see all of those totals down at the bottom. But again, you will now see, I'm just going to collapse these because it can just be a little bit easier to view here, how the actual hours are the ones that have pulled through. So research had previously been 12, it's now 5, and documentation and writing had previously been 10 and it's now at 3. So it has pulled through those actuals for us to be able to more accurately estimate. And then again, probably from here, you'd then go ahead and click schedule to then get into that portion of everything. And because of the fact that this is even already broken down at that staff and role level, it will break it out into those individual tasks for you as well. Okay, great. I do feel like I'm talking quite quickly. Again, Jimmy, any questions on this one right off the bat?
Quick question. Does the work hours consider vacation days? The working hours consider vacation days or holidays?
Yes, you should definitely always consider those. Or sorry, what? Oh, sorry, I heard you saying something. If you're looking at working hours, if your staff are on a salary that would include those hours in it, then yes, you should include those. If they're not, then I would not. Jimmy, anything you'd like to elaborate on that?
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, great. So now again, before we go jump, these are all the workflows that I wanted to touch on. So now I just want to show everyone how we can go ahead so that these costs can be calculated here for us. So for all of you that have probably spoken with me and know how to go and actually put in actual costs, those live directly against your staff members, but the cost rate card is what is used to allow you to calculate the blended cost rate. So what you would need to do is actually come into your rate categories. So it's admin, rate and staff management, and rate categories. If you don't already have it set up, you'd be able to go ahead and create a new rate. We usually recommend calling it Z cost rate because then I'll just pop it down to the bottom list for you and again, continue to call it cost rate. And then what you need to do is make sure that this is here marked as cost rate. So make this my cost rate card, which will allow you again to have an individual, the billable rate and a cost rate active at the same time on that estimate. This happens quite regularly where people are trying to set up their cost rate card. They don't click this. They choose the cost rate as the rate when they're building their original estimate. They're like, okay, wait, no, this is like calculating the estimate based off of the cost rate rather than just the cost rate and our standard client rate. You would then go ahead and put in what those default items are. These are already saved here for us. But then where you're really going to get that full view is through admin, rate and staff management, service rates, and markups. And then here is where we always have the breakout of each of the individual rate cards. So again, we have our standard client rate, discount rate, and higher rate. These are your billable rates. And then we have the cost rate card here at the end as well, so that you can see what the breakout is here as well for yourselves. So again, we usually recommend this just being a basic blended rate. However, if say you have your services set up to actually be your roles within your agency, there are a few people that I work with that do prefer that because that's how an estimate needs to look. You can also spread this out individually as well with different cost rates. My best practice though is always just keep it as a blended one at this point for estimating because it's really just here to give you an idea of it. It's later on when you're pulling the actuals for your billing and your costs where your profitability is going to be calculated. Okay, awesome. Jimmy, again, questions, anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, great, awesome. Well, we still do have a few minutes, so I'm just going to quickly show you guys some printouts that we also have as options in here. So I'll just go back to our basic one. So for everyone that maybe hasn't had an opportunity to play around with your printouts, all of these are editable and customizable in the back end of the system through admin system setup and printing preferences. And any printout within the system that you need to make adjustments on, those are back there for you to be able to manipulate as needed. I've gone ahead and just created, well, we have some preset ones in here for you to be able to look at. So depending on the level of detail you need, you do have the option of actually making it quite detailed with the service group, service description, and then breaking out the cost per service directly on the printout that you may want to share with your client. We also have the ability of creating a super simple one, which is just the overall service group for yourself with that cost associated. Or if we want to go somewhere right in the middle, we've got our standard printout option here, which is the service group, the service, and then again, just the overall cost as well. So we do have the ability of again, doing a little bit of manipulation here, depending on what detail of cost you need to get into at that service line, what level of detail you need to show. And then we do also have, so this is just the basic printout option. We do also have an estimated detail option as well, which gets even more detailed for you too, if you're really needing to continue to break that out with the quantity and the rate. So again, a lot of this is through the printing preferences that you can manipulate. If you find that there's something that maybe you're missing, again, feel free to reach out to the success team at success@functionpoint.com, and we can definitely help you create what your most ideal printout or client-facing printout would look like. So yeah, this one was surprising to me. I was asking the team like, hey, what are some more advanced things that you think we should sort of just touch on? And they're like, we're getting a lot of questions about printouts recently. So I thought I would just show you guys a little high level what we can accomplish. Okay, awesome. Well, that was really everything I wanted to make sure we touched on today. Oh, you know what? The only thing I didn't show was from that tips and tricks, and it's being able to create revisions. So as you are creating your estimates here, you have this create revision button up here. So if you're wanting to have a little bit more scope creep and just understand what changes are happening between each of your estimates, you can create revisions. So we can click revise here. You can go ahead and make whatever changes you need to this estimate. Maybe you're actually even going to add in a new service group. This is getting a little bit more advanced for this. So maybe I'll add in some of the web design items. I'll go ahead and click add. And then we would then be able to break out any of the hours here that we would need. Go ahead and click save. And now this would be your new estimate that you have. You'll now see that the estimate has an R1 at the end to track that revision. And if you ever needed to see all the revisions through time, you can actually come underneath the revision section here and see your historical one versus which one is your active estimate. And then something that I find is a really good practice, if you are wanting to make sure that revisions are tracked, make sure that you approve your estimate, because then that will actually put the estimate in an approved state and sort of lock it. So if anyone wanted to make a change at all, they would be forced to make a revision. So again, depending on what your workflow is, if you're wanting to track those sorts of things, I usually recommend it as a good best practice, but of course everyone is different, just depending on the speed or complexity of their estimates. Okay, now I think I've covered everything that I wanted to make sure I touched on. Again, Jimmy, questions, anything you think we should tackle on screen?
Yeah, a common question that comes up actually is for agencies is, you know, if they're halfway, they create the estimate, they start working on the job, and then halfway through the job, there's a change in scope. So is the revision something that can be utilized for scope changes halfway through a job?
Yeah, definitely. So again, if you know that something needs to be changed or added on, you could come in here, create that revision, and then through those printouts, if you're maybe only wanting to include the newest section of it, you could actually go ahead and, is through here. So when we're viewing this, because everyone's already aware of this, we could share just the bottom section and go ahead and print that and send it off for approval for those areas. So yeah, lots of options depending on what sort of changes need to be made at what point within that job.
Awesome.
Did that sort of answer the question there, Jimmy? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, I think so. I'll add that also that if you do update the estimate because there's additional budget, such as ad spend halfway through the job, that does update the budget of your job as well. So the two are tied together. So it is something that is very valuable for you to track historic changes that are going on through that as well. A question is if you could show how you can on the when you're editing the services of the estimate, how you can maybe reorder the line items.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, if you're wanting to reorder anything, maybe even bring web design up to the top, you can grab the service group itself and just drag and drop through these arrows, or you can actually do that with the individual services as well. The only thing I would say is that they do still have to stay within the service group they're already a part of. You can't move them between service groups. So if you actually need, say, web design within the creative service one, you will need to come over here to add in that service. To have it appear in that section. So if I go ahead and add web design, I'll add, and it will drop it down here at the bottom so that you could then now delete it from here. Yeah, so there's lots of kind of moving options within here, but again, they have to be within the service group or an add or delete kind of process.
Awesome. Perfect. Another question that came up is if you revise the schedule with new service groups and then sync that change back to the estimate, does that create a revision on the estimate?
Good question. Well, first of all, if you're creating a new task group within a schedule, you won't have the options of adding in any services or service groups that are not already associated to an estimate. So therefore, if you're looking to add in new services and service groups, you do still have to go back to the estimate anyways and update that. And then you'd have to navigate back to the schedule to add in your tasks with those service groups and services. Now, if you were already utilizing services that are on the estimate and you're just updating hours on the schedule, then that would be what would sync back. And in theory, I would guess it would create a revision, but I'll admit I don't think I've ever actually tested that, so I would need to give it a try.
Awesome. You know what? I think then what we'll do is we'll give it a try and make sure on the back end, and then we'll follow that up in the email afterwards.
Again, though, that would only be with hours. It would not add in any services or service groups. So I just feel like that's something to emphasize.
Okay. Cool. All right. The next question is it possible to show the different taxes on an estimate?
Great question. So we have the ability of showing taxes on an estimate through the printout. It's actually not directly on this page as you're maybe used to on the, say, invoice page. So what you would have the ability to do is through the printing preferences on my printouts, I'm just going to pull up maybe the simple one. We're going to edit that. And underneath services here, you have the option of showing taxes. So as long as your taxes are set up correctly in your system and applied appropriately to the right service in the back end, as well as the tax group that you would want applied to the specific company, then it should pull through taxes for you. So let me just grab this. I'm going to show you what this will look like. I just want to make sure that I have. This is still through one that I'm working here. just going to check that I have a tax group against Coca-Cola here, which I do not. So let's just add this. So if you're, again, wanting this, you'll need to make sure that, again, the client Coca-Cola, we want a tax group applied to there. I'm just going to add in GST here. If you have any numbers that you need to make sure are included on printouts, make sure those are input there as well. I'm going to save that. We'll come back to that estimate here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click. It was the simple estimate I had put in. And now this is where you're going to see that GST subtotal of $855 based off of what the estimated amounts are up here with that tax that has been applied against it. So that is the way you can get taxes on your estimates. And again, I flew through that pretty quickly. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, we can definitely help with that. Jimmy, this is fun. You got lots of good questions being thrown at me. Anything else?
Yeah, a follow-up question from that actually is,
okay.
So if a company has multiple taxes like GST and PST, how would that also pull through? Or how do you pull that through?
Yeah, so if you have companies that would work with multiple taxes, you'll need to create appropriate tax groups that hold all of those taxes within it that you would then apply against it. So for example, with Coca-Cola again here, and if we were to edit this, we have created the tax group in my system of GST PST. So you'll just need to make sure that there's a tax group that holds all of those different taxes in there, and then it will calculate all of it. So again, if I were to add this in, again, you'll see how it's broken out with the number options in here. We'll save, head back to that estimate. And then if we go ahead and print that simple one again, get rid of some of these old ones, you're gonna now see that that breakout of GST and PST is here as well. Now again, taxes is going down a whole nother rabbit hole. Again, if you guys have questions on how to add in taxes, feel free to reach out to Support or Success and we'll help you get those set up.
So I would just want to remind everyone that since we're approaching the end, that we will send out a follow-up email from our marketing team within 24 hours with the webinar recording, as well as some help articles that was discussed today. So if such as setting up your cost rates or the different workflow scenarios. So do look forward to those.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, great. Well then, again, Jimmy, if that's sort of all the questions you think we should tackle on screen, why don't we wrap up before the top of the hour? Again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. It was fun kind of just tackling some of these more advanced things. I hope you all learned something. And Jimmy, as always, thank you so much for co-hosting with me and answering all those questions and throwing curveballs at me while we're on screen. It's always fun.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.